Hi, welcome to Pittsburgh Sportsline. We've got a great show for you lined up tonight. I'm Mike Migliori. I'm here with Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, Al Levine, the Talking Machine, and we're going to start off, as usual, with What's on Your Mind. Al, what's on your mind?
Well, before I get what's on my mind, you know I got to do a few community announcements. I'll keep it short this week, not like the marathon I had last week. Our good friend and Smoking Jim's friend who he brought to the show, Glenn Anderson, wants you to go to msasports.net and then vote for your positive athlete, nominate somebody. The banquet's the 21st. Try to get this in before the 14th. Everybody in Bethel Park, Baldwin, Mount Lebanon, Upper St. Clair, South Fayette, anybody that's around here, try to get your favorite athlete in there. It'd be a good thing for them. Okay, what's on my mind today is I saw that interview with Tim Tebow, and there's our man here telling you what a quarterback he is. What a class individual. They were trying to tear him down and throw him off his game. He didn't miss a beat. He says he's friends with Sanchez. They have no problem. He's willing to do whatever they want. He's glad that the coaches want him on the team for whatever he has to do. So to me, Tebow come up there and he hit a home run out of the ballpark in baseball season there. He looked like he's going to be a perfect fit with them. And everybody's asking me, why would they even have him on the team? And I think it's so basic that Rex Ryan saw when Tebow beat him and he couldn't stop him, that he said, I don't want him against me anymore. I want him on my team to throw him in to mix people up. So that's what's on my mind tonight.
Well, I got to tell you something about Tim Tebow. Has to be the most celebrated backup quarterback in history. I mean, honest to God, the guy's been signed to be the backup, and he's getting tons and tons of publicity. I think he's a great guy. We talked about him before, and I think he's a talented quarterback. He needs some more time to, get his act together, develop a little bit. But he's, he beat the Steelers.
And he's so media savvy that he's the only guy I ever seen that didn't have anybody introduce him. He introduced himself to the press conference. Everybody else was away.
He's 23 years old. This isn't a 30-year-old experienced guy. I mean, and look at the good that he does. He has foundations where he's helping people come to games that are going to die in a few months. And look at the smile on his face. They throw these questions at him. They're trying to bait him on certain things, lead him around and walk this kid around the block. He's a 23-year-old young man. And look at how they're trying to mislead him and project him as something else and make fun of God. Who would ever hear of that in this day and age?
You know what? I got to tell you, as far as the smile on his face, give me $5 million to sit on the bench and hold a clipboard all day on Sunday, I'm smiling too.
Well, to speak to the Tim Tebow thing, this is actually a move that the Jets really had to make PR-wise. You figure, they're competing against the New York Giants, the defending Super Bowl champions, and think about how much of a disaster the Jets' season ended in last year. There's sniping amongst the players. There's, people complaining about the quarterback. San Antonio Holmes is quitting in the middle of games and everything. So then to be able to compete in the New York market, they had to do something to bring, the focus back on the Jets. I think it was a very wise move on their part. And we'll see how it plays out for them.
I think you're absolutely right, Chip, because I haven't heard a thing about the New York Giants all week. And that's a fact.
And
Eli.
And they only won the Super Bowl 2 months ago.
All right, Jim, what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind is it looks like we got 4 Soul Brothers up here. Everybody's dark today, man. You guys all tanned up looking good. But speaking of Soul Brothers, what's on my mind in the locker room in the Scouts Corner is the actual Soul Bowl. Back in the day, they used to play a game in Miami in the Orange Bowl called the Soul Bowl. And the Soul Bowl pitted 2 great high school teams in the Florida area, Northwestern High School, which is an all-black high school, and Jackson High School. And they used to play in front of 50,000 fans at the Orange Bowl. So I went down one year because, I went down every year after this, but the first year I went down is because Northwestern High School had a player who was being recruited by Pitt. He was the #1 running back in the country, high school-wise, and they said he was the best running back in Florida since Emmitt Smith. His name was Torrey Cox. So I went down to see Torrey Cox play, and after 5 minutes watching him play in the game in the first quarter, I knew right off the bat he wasn't a running back. And so I sat at the game, and I was watching, and all of a sudden, this kid only had 3 or 4 catches in a game, but I kept saying, who's number 80 for Northwestern? He's about 6'2", wide receiver, ran great patterns, had great hands. So after the game, I went into the locker room and I talked to the coach, and the coach told me this kid was a 3.5 grade point average student, had 0 scholarship offers. Louisville was interested, but they hadn't offered any scholarships yet. So I called Walt Harris from It Ain't My Fault, Walt, from Pitt, and Walt Harris recruited Torrey Cox. It was his first Florida recruit, and because he recruited Torrey Cox and he was afraid that Torrey Cox would be homesick and maybe transfer out of the University of Pittsburgh, he extended the last scholarship. They only had 25 scholarships that year, and they gave that scholarship to Antonio Bryant. Antonio Bryant came up here as basically a walk-on and rewrote the University of Pitt record books. And I remember an attorney took me out to dinner, an agent, and I can't say his name, Ralph Sendricks. And at the time, Pitt had a wide receiver named Lateef Grimm, and he was a junior. He had just won the Blitnikoff Award, and he was thinking about turning pro, and Ralph Sendricks asked me my advice, and before I answered, I ordered everything almost on the menu because I knew he wasn't going to like what I said, but Lateef Grimm was projected to go late first round, mid to early second round, and they felt like if he came back for a senior year, he might be a Heisman Trophy winner or top 10 pick. And I told Ralph Sendricks that if my opinion, Torrey Cox should go pro, Lateef Grimm should go pro because the NFL never drafts a guy high as a senior if he's not the best wide receiver on his team. He says, what are you talking about? I said, Antonio Bryant is going to be the best wide receiver on Pitt's team. They didn't follow my advice. Lateef Grimm comes back for a senior year. Antonio Bryant was the star, and Lateef Grimm did not get drafted at all. He walked on to the Washington Redskins, and they walked him out of camp a week later and never put on a football uniform again. So there you have it, in the locker room with the scout, my Antonio Bryant story.
I got to tell you, Jim Frazier, Smoking Jim Frazier, is a very good friend of mine. And personally, I think he's the best in the business, but he never gives himself enough credit, and he's very humble. Jim, I thought you said that man's name very well.
And I have one question. I have one question.
I'll say it again.
How was the meal?
Oh, man, it was good.
How was that free meal?
It was good.
I respect that.
Very good at saying Sindridge's name. If I could say it one more time before we get to all right, Chip, what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind this week is that finally we've gotten some punishments handed out on the bonus gate in the professional football. And for once, Roger Goodell actually got it right. He suspended Sean Payton for a year. They indefinitely suspended Greg Williams. And, they took some draft picks away from the Saints. And I think that was a great start. But now comes the long wait because we have to wait for the Players Association to finish their investigation of the players involved. And that got me thinking, okay, in professional football, everybody is at the salary cap limit, okay? So if that is the case and they don't have any room to make player movements, and all of a sudden you've got players getting, under-the-table cash payments, what does that do to the salary cap? And should that affect, what has happened in the past? Now, if that was the case and they could have done something about the games, then there's a lot more impact on this than people would really originally thought because, the Saints, if they lose a game or two because of the fact the players got paid for hits, does that take them out of playoff contention? And is there a team that could have gone to the playoffs that never did? It's just one of the things that kind of crossed my mind with this, and it'll be interesting to see how the Players Association allows the players to be disciplined, which is what I think is the most ironic thing of it, because I think, if you play in the NFL, shouldn't it be up to the commissioner whether or not you get punished? Why does it have to fall to the union? And that's what's on my mind.
All right, guys. Well, I watched the Penguins play Ottawa in Ottawa the other night, and Penguins lost that game pretty badly. They did not really play that well in front of Brad Thiessen. They gave up 8 goals. But that's not what bothered me. I watched, and they had, I guess the woman was an opera singer that sang the national anthem there, and she was bad, and she dragged it out a very, very long time. But again, that's not what I'm thinking about here. If you look at the fans, when you watch a game where an American team is playing in Canada, they play the American national anthem and they play the Canadian national anthem. And the Canadian fans are very respectful during the playing of the American national anthem all the time. They'll either sing along with it or sit quietly and or stand at attention, whatever, but they're very respectful. And then they sing along with their own national anthem, and they're very proud of their national anthem. I'm reminded of the last time that Toronto played here, and I went to the game, and during the singing of the Canadian national anthem, I had 2 yo-yos standing in front of me wearing Sidney Crosby shirts, of all things, and booing the Canadian national anthem. Wow. I kind of tapped them on the shoulder and explained to them, the guy whose shirt you're wearing is from Canada, and that's his national anthem that you're booing. And they responded like you would respond if you were from Cleveland. Okay, but they're not from Cleveland. You're from Pittsburgh. Have a little bit of respect when you go down there. Doesn't look like we're going to see too many Canadian teams in the playoffs, with the exception of Ottawa. But if you get an opportunity to go to one of these games and they play the Canadian national anthem, okay, if you're a good person or whatever, if you want to represent Pittsburgh well, then show some respect. Don't boo the thing, and show some respect to your own national anthem too. The songs aren't that long. The game's not going anywhere. They're going to be there. But if you boo either your national anthem especially or another country's national anthem, you don't deserve to be there. And you really don't deserve to be living in Pittsburgh. You should move to Cleveland. And that's what I got. That's what's on my mind today. Guys, big sports week. We're on the Penguins. Might as well stay there. They did have a pretty bad loss to Ottawa. Bounced back, won their next game. I think they look great. Chris Letang not going to play tonight, but they're saying lower body injury, not concussion related. They've got a couple of injuries on the defense. They have Niskanen out. They have Lovejoy out. Mm-hmm. They did have Steve Sullivan out. He missed 1 game, which the knock on Sullivan, for his whole career was that he's always hurt. He's always hurt. This year he's only missed 1 game, and he is going to play tonight. He's back in the lineup. And they brought up Brian Strait, and they brought up Simon Dupre, and I think Dupre is an outstanding player. I think he's probably about a year away from being at his best and being NHL ready. And behind him for probably another 2 years is Joe Morrow. Our defense looks very good for a long time. Again, I like the Penguins' chances a lot. Guys, what do you think?
No, there's no question that the Penguins are coming on strong at the right time of the year. And after that embarrassing loss that they had in Ottawa the other night, they came back strong against the Devils. And that's probably somebody that they're going to be seeing in the playoffs more than likely. And this team's gelling well. And I think, the exception of Lovejoy, who's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. The defense, to make it deep in the playoffs, you need more depth at defense. And right now, we've got quality defensemen playing, and they're bringing up some adequate fill-ins. But the most important thing for me, as far as I'm concerned, is they've got to have Letang back, and they got to have him back healthy, because I think he makes a world of difference back there.
I'll take over on
Go
the
ahead, Al.
Penguins there.
You can talk.
Smokey Jim. Well, I was down here so lost in the conversation. Well, I think it goes back to Ray Shero and getting a lot of the players for the defensive alignments. Think about what he's done. He's actually set the table here with the minor leagues, made a few trades where he got these players in, and they're interchangeable with this system that Bylsma has. And then I go back to look at Sidney Crosby. He's been on lines with Stahl, Dupuis, mixing up with Cook. Look at Cook, reminds me of Robbie Brown right now with the way he's a scoring machine with Sid out there. So they have a lot of pieces to this puzzle that are working out. And one little minor blip in there, I like a loss before the end of the season, even a couple, as long as it doesn't become a pattern, because those long streaks, I'd rather have them in the playoffs. And they are starting to prime up for the playoffs. I think they're going to run deep, if not win it all. If they don't win it all, it'll be a surprise to me. So I'm with you guys.
Well, I think the key is going to be for the team to be fresh, with all the injuries. Cindy Crosby is going to be fresh because he hasn't played much in the last 2 years. But I think the Penguins end the season against Philadelphia. Hopefully it'll be a meaningless series and they can kind of sit down most of their key players and maybe bring some guys up from Wilkes-Barre and play and then go into the playoffs, with some healthy legs.
Well, we got Malkin on the verge of winning his next scoring championship. And it brings up an interesting question. Who do you pick? Malkin may very well be the league MVP this year. Mm-hmm. But, who would be a better MVP of the Penguins than Marc-Andre Fleury? I mean, I think, it's going to be an interesting argument to make because I tell you right now, with the kind of season that Fleury's having this year, where would the Penguins be without him? That would be an interesting argument.
Now, it's pretty well documented how I feel about Marc-Andre Fleury. I think it's not only ridiculous, but a disgrace that when people talk about the best goalies in the league, you hear about Lundqvist, and you hear Miller, and you hear Thomas out of Boston. Nobody ever mentions Fleury. And you know what? Not only should he be mentioned among those players, Marc-Andre Fleury should be mentioned among goalies like Martin Brodeur and Dominic Hasek and Ken Dryden, because he's not only the best in the league right now, he's one of the best that's ever been in the league. He's going to be setting records. All the Penguins goalie records by the middle of next year will be owned by Marc-Andre Fleury. He'll pass up Barrasso in half the amount of games that Barrasso played. He's easily the most dynamic goalie that you're going to see. He makes outstanding saves time after time after time, and even though he used to do that in his early part of his career, he used to sometimes give up a couple of soft goals here and there. This year, Fleury has been totally consistent. He's easily the guy that if you give me a team to start, if you want me to win the Stanley Cup, Marc-Andre Fleury's my goalie. I wouldn't trade him for anybody.
Well, I think actually Marc-Andre Fleury's is actually going to break a couple of Barrasso's records this season before the year's out. I think he's within 2 or 3 wins of Barrasso's single season total of wins, and he may even be within sniffing distance of his career number of wins that he's had with the Penguins.
And shutouts. He can break his shutout.
But, and the way that Fleury's been playing, could it be possible that a player on a team wins the league MVP and he's not the most valuable player on his own team?
Yes. Yes.
I think
Malkin
so too.
That's the kind of dilemma.
Malkin has even said that without Fleury, they would not be where they're at. And Malkin's one of my favorite players, not just because he's doing well.
Is that because Fleury didn't put up the stats like Malkin is, that he's not even going to be considered for the league MVP. But argue with anybody is where would they be without him?
Right. It showed his true worth when they had that winning streak. They started out 3 or 4 games where they were getting outshot 7-8 to 1, and he was playing out of his mind. He was flipping around, flopping around, grabbing saves. He does that with the glove. And he kept them in the game until they started scoring. So, without that, the streak would have never been up to where it was. No, so there's no doubt. And Malkin should be the league MVP, just with what he's done carrying the team on his back with sit out and all the injuries that we've had. But, Fleury should definitely be the team MVP.
Now, the only flaw in Fleury's game is when he goes behind the net to handle the puck and kicks it out. Sometimes he stands there and watches it, admiring his stick handling, but that gets him in trouble every once in a while. But overall, like I said, I would never pick another goalie. We've been very lucky here. We've got probably 3 of the best players in the league with Fleury, Malkin, and Crosby. Personally, I think Malkin has demonstrated that right now he is the best player in the league. Sidney Crosby's looked amazing. He's doing a lot of great things, and it's a shame that we haven't been able to watch them both all season long. Although if Sidney Crosby had played all season, Malkin probably wouldn't have as many points. Not because he's not able to play like that, but he just would not have had as much ice time. Because you can't put them both on the, usually you don't put them both on the ice at the same time. You have to split that ice time up. But either way, there's nobody else in the league that compare them. I can't imagine a team beating them in a 7-game series. It would be very shocking.
With you got Malkin, you've got Fleury, you've got Crosby, and you've got 3 mega superstars in the hockey, and they play so well together. We don't have the ego clashes and the backstabbing and the sniping at one another. I mean, they are the ultimate team players, and that's what I think is truly special about what they've built here at the console.
No, if you remember the turn, they went on a 6-game losing streak. I can't even start to think of how they lost 6 games in a row. But that ended when the media, of course, the wonderful Pittsburgh sports media, started talking about how the players don't want Crosby to be the captain anymore, and they all came out to practice. They all came out to the morning skate they all had C's on their shirts, except for Malkin, who had a K. But they all came out, all dressed as the captain in a tribute to Sidney Crosby, and pretty much showed, there's no rebellion here. They seem to be a very tight team. I mean, you never know what might be going on in the background, but they seem to be a very, very tight team.
I think they all realize how fortunate they are to be playing with one another, and they're living in the moment, and I hope the hell they enjoy it.
Of course, guys like Malkin and Crosby and Fleury and Neal get all the press. But you go up and down that lineup, there's nobody that's a liability on that team. Everybody on that team is playing, having the best years of their careers, most of them. Even guys like Richard Park, who's been totally reborn, and Matt Cook, who has gone from being supposedly the most dirty player in the game to having career goals,
to having a scoring touch.
And, they're playing great. There's nobody that is out of place there.
And look at with Cook, what you're saying. He had more goals than he had penalty minutes up until just a week or so ago. And they call him for some ticky-tack type penalties. He's gotten crushed around the net. Goaltenders are popping him in the head. Other people are just smacking him because they know there's like a little go ahead and beat Cook up for all he's done in the past. For him to change his game style with Lemieux having that talk that you're gone if you don't change, he did a super job. And look at Dupuis. How do you forget about Dupuis? We have guys with 23 goals here. Dupuy's been like a madman out there. He's always been fast, but he never scored goals like this. So, we can go on and on. Look at Stahl, even how he's matured and played. Look at the strength he has. And then look at Sid making 2 lifetime moves coming down the ice. How about how he's flicking the puck around with a stick, getting it?
That was a pretty.
That's a once in a lifetime, and he did it within 10 minutes. And he scored the goal on the second one.
I blinked my eyes when I saw that. I was like, "Did I just see that?" Wow, that was pretty amazing.
So I mean, that's a talent. And again, that's players that are great players. They lift the other players up, and that's what you see on teams like Jim and Mike and Chip and I. We've all talked about that. They lift the other players up. They improve what they do. Who can forget Neal scoring 1 goal while he was here and then 1 in the playoffs? I mean, look at him. He's a scoring machine. And what's he, about 2nd or 3rd in total shots? So, I mean, he's improved. He feels comfortable now, and he has good players around him. Look what they're doing there. So,
so you're referring to last season when he had only 1 goal in the regular season with the Penguins and 1 goal in the playoffs?
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd like you to forget it.
Okay.
He's going out of his way to try to make sure that you forget it.
I almost did.
And I already had.
Let's hope he drags that out through the playoffs. I think that we're getting ready to watch something very special in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year.
Well, you guys mentioned Brasso. How does he compare with Fleury? And what did you guys think of Brasso?
Tom Barrasso came in. He won 2 Stanley Cups in a row for the Penguins. He had his flaws too. Mostly on he would give up a lot of long goals. I'm not sure why that is, but if you take a shot from out in the circle or out on the point, you're more likely to beat him from there than if you're up close on him. Barrasso was a very good goalie. He just was not popular with the local sports media, and you know.
He rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But I mean, as far as being an excellent goaltender, he was. When he came into the league at 18 years old, I think in the, what was that, in the 83-84 season, I think he won the Vezina Trophy as a very, very young man. So I mean, he was extremely talented. And it carried through the rest of his career. Now, you know, the personal opinion of him from most of the people I talked to in Pittsburgh, they didn't care for him. But I mean, as a player, he was one of the best.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Fleury, in addition to the fact that he's very good, is that he's very personable. He's always got that huge smile on, and you know, I don't know if I like that huge smile after you just got burnt 5-0. But you know what? He's got it, and one of the things that makes a good goalie is that you can forget that game. So
Yes.
okay, that one's over. Go on to the next one. He seems to be a real happy guy, a real personable guy, and you know that makes people like him even more. You know, makes him even better.
Well, you know, and this year what I've noticed more out of him is that, you know, if he does give up a goal, I mean, he'll shut down the next 2 or 3 scoring opportunities. It's not like, you know, there's only been once, maybe twice this year where he's given up more than, you know, 1 goal at a time, where he's given up 2 or 3 because he's kind of lost his focus or anything like that. And then, you know, Mike mentioned that he's been completely consistent this year, and I think it's because he's just focused on, you know, the task that he has to do.
Well, I know I enjoyed watching Barrasso play. He played goaltending just like these guys described. You knew he would always keep you in the game. And sure, he let those long goals in, and that was so frustrating. But goaltenders do let some soft shots in, as we all see. You know, it's just part of the game. It's just you hope not to see it all the time. But he was a heck of a player there. You know, it's just people didn't like him. So he wasn't popular, and he didn't care about it. He was pretty boisterous about that, too. So.
One of the other things that Barrasso had to deal with was he was on the Lemieux teams, where it was Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr and Kevin Stevens, and they thought like defense was something that the Steelers played because they were not too good about trying to protect.
Well, back in those days, you know, the scoring leaders were scoring 150 points, and you know, there's Gretzky putting up almost 200. You know, if you notice that the league leader in points is just, you know, just north of 100 points scored for the season. I mean, Lemieux used to have 130, 140 assists himself. You know, so you know you don't see the you know, the kind of offensive explosions anymore that you see. The game's more defense oriented.
And how's you guys' brackets making out?
Well, I've still got Kentucky in mind.
Yeah, well, I still got Kentucky too.
Let me make that unanimous with us 3.
Okay.
I have Kentucky. That's it. Hey, Jim, why don't you tell us what you have?
No,
Without bragging.
Kentucky and Louisville.
He got all 4, right? You got Florida and Louisville.
No, I had North Carolina going.
You know what? I'll be interested to watch the Louisville and Kentucky game, because I think Louisville kind of reminds me, to a certain degree, of UConn last year. You know, they got hot in the Big East tournament, and they swept that, and then they swept right through to the NCAA tournament. And Louisville's, you don't count them out, but I mean, Kentucky's got a strong team, but anything can happen in these games.
I have one half of my bracket looked okay, and the other half was terrible.
Decimated.
Of course, I thought Creighton would beat North Carolina, so stop there. But
I must have been copying off of you because I have Louisville and Kentucky left too, and my brackets are destroyed. I texted Jim the other day that they're busted.
I mean, people talk about Ohio State because they had a nice little run there and stuff, but you know, I don't think you can count out Kansas. I think if any team could beat Kentucky, Kansas. I would think Kansas would be the only one.
Yeah, you know,
I mean, Louisville, you always got, anytime you got a rivalry like that, there's always a chance. So Louisville and Kentucky,
and, you know, with the history of Kentucky basketball and, you know, Louisville being the upstart and everything, you know, that'll be interesting. But yeah, I did watch Kansas dismantle North Carolina on Sunday, and that was a pretty impressive win. I wouldn't surprise me to see them in the final.
And don't forget, Rick Pitino used to coach Kansas.
Right.
And
Kentucky.
Kentucky, and to a national championship. You know?
Right. Pitino's a good coach.
Yeah, he is.
I don't think he can outpay, you know, Calipari.
No way.
Calipari.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Got some deep pockets.
Yes, they do.
They both have some good supporters out there.
You know, like
a lot of athletic supporters there in the community.
Most colleges recruit athletes, you know, to get their college degree. And, Calipari says, "Look, all I need is 1 year out of you, and then you can go and make your millions."
He even tells them better. I'll get you to the NBA.
And he does.
And he does. He gets them there, and he gets them paid.
Exactly.
He does. Yeah, he's got. Never talks about graduating. That doesn't mean a thing.
He may not even have to pay him if you got a record like that. Think about it.
By the time
One and done, kids. You're going to the NBA.
By the time they've been in school long enough to be academically ineligible, they're already on their way to the pros.
And a couple of guys that maybe was on the bubble about going to maybe Kentucky or somewhere else, and assistant coaches at Kentucky usually can find some Kardashian lookalikes for those players to kind of sway them.
They throw hookers through their bedroom window.
I'll tell you, while we're on the subject of the NCAA tournament, I don't know if I actually filled out a bracket for the NCAA women's tournament.
Wow.
And the Baylor
they looked super
team,
the other day.
Oh, my Lord. They looked very good last night. And that girl Griner, I don't know what her first name is. She's just an amazing basketball
What's
player.
her name?
Last name's Griner. Okay.
She's a female. Okay.
We
Destiny or something, right? You told us about her.
don't we know somebody's going to Baylor next year?
Yeah.
She should change her name. Huh? Yeah, that's.
But right now the Baylor women are going to accomplish something, I think, this year that you don't see very often. And I know the last, couple 3 years ago, UConn, they won 88 games in a row, but they're going to finish the season undefeated. And I'm telling you, any team that can finish a season undefeated, playing close to 40 games, got to tip your hat to them. If you get a chance to watch it, watching the women play is kind of interesting. It puts a different perspective on the game than watching the men.
Is there some team in the WNBA going to give up 3 first rounds and a second to get Griner? But my dad's a big basketball fan, and he actually prefers the women's game over the men's game because of all the strategy involved, the passing, and the fundamentals. He just loves it.
No, it is. It's actually much more enjoyable to watch than somebody mugging for the camera and working on their contract for the NBA or the shoe company that they're going to represent.
And there was 3,000 fans at the CBI. What's that? That's 2 out of 3, And
what is that?
Pitt lost a heartbreaker, but they get Washington State back home pretty soon.
Okay, so the championship is the best 2 out of 3?
Yeah.
Okay, because I heard Pitt lost last night, and I was like, okay, now they're done. But no, maybe they won that one. Huh?
I wish somebody would have told me how to watch the game.
Yeah. 60.
When is this game going to be?
Was that 3,000 viewers on TV or in the arena?
Now, who paid for that game? Who paid for that? Washington?
That even counts people that watch clips on YouTube.
Oh, man, I really hope Pitt gets a chance to hoist that banner to CBI.
Do they have a banner?
They might have to hire Betsy Ross to sell it for.
She's no longer with us.
Oh, shit.
She's not around anymore, Chips. Betsy can't do it.
You know what I mean.
Seriously, with all the news coverage and the publicity that this has gotten, they could raise that banner whether they win it or not. Nobody know any different.
That's true. But just to jump to the NFL real quick, like to make some great predictions. Everybody's thinking that Tim Tebow is going to the New York Jets to be a backup quarterback. The guy's not built for that. Tim Tebow is going to come in, he's going to work. If there's anybody whose job is up and whose personality is fragile, it's Sanchez. Don't forget, Sanchez only started 1 year at USC. Of course, USC at the time was one of the best football team programs in the country. After they had Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, but he couldn't even beat out David Josh Booty or whoever it was. So he only started 1 year at USC, and I think it's a good situation for Tim Tebow. The offensive coordinator was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, where they love to run the Wildcat. Tim Tebow's going to come in. He's going to work extremely hard. I expect him to be the starter before the 8th game of the season. And Rex Ryan's a hard-nosed coach. They like to win with the running game and defense. And who's better to be under center? And what is underrated with Tim Tebow is his leadership ability. And that's something that Sanchez never had. Sanchez couldn't lead silent prayer. He lost his locker room. He lost the team. And Sanchez's work ethic stinks. And that was some of the things that was anonymously said by several of the teammates. And Tim Tebow's in there working right now, and I guarantee you that.
Well, you know, and that's interesting that you mentioned the fact that Tebow may end up starting. I do believe that Tebow will be starting in New York by the midpoint of the season. And, you know, the thing that I was kind of going back and forth, is he going to end up the starter because the media is going to anoint him the starter and pressure the team into doing it like it happened in Denver? Or is just Sanchez's play, is he going to play his way out, you know, off the starting lineup? And that's what I think is going to happen, because as soon as things start going wrong for Sanchez, it's going to be like a house of cards. It's just going to come tumbling down.
Well, I vote for that second choice, that Sanchez will play his way out of the starting lineup. I mean, his ego's fragile, like you say. Maybe his work ethic isn't what it's supposed to be. But the New York fans, you know they're going to be saying Jim's favorite word, Tebow time. And I know it's 2 words, but he's going to be bringing that up. And you know that the kid will outwork him. There's no doubt that Tebow will. So it's just a matter of time. It might be before your prediction there, Smoking Jim. Because Sanchez, I don't have much faith in what he can do there. So that'll be something to see.
No, he did say by the 8th game, so whenever they fit him in, they fit him in. And, you know, we'll give Jim credit for that.
Yeah, if it's before, you're a winner.
Rex Ryan's already talking about right out the gate 20 plays for a game for Tebow.
Oh, did he say 20?
To be honest with you, Rex Ryan's got to do something, because, you know, with the kind of year that he had last year, you know, in a town like New York, he may not be having too many more seasons to prove that he can do it, you know. And he went to 2 AFC championship games in a row, and I think he goes into this season with his neck on the line.
Well, another thing with a town like New York is when Tebow gets down there and does his Tebow thing, it'll take him a while to figure out what he's actually doing. You know, I think Tebow's. I think Sanchez is a serviceable quarterback too. I think he's done okay up there. I think he's actually done more than you had any right to expect from him, because, like you said, he was only a starter for 1 year at USC, and it wasn't all that great then. I think Tebow is probably a better quarterback, depending on what you're looking for. But as long as they want to try a running game and a strong defensive game, I think he's good for them. I think Tebow is a very athletic quarterback. And if they want to run the ball, he can run the ball a little bit with them. I'm not suggesting that they go to like the wishbone or anything like that, but I don't think, you know, I think that a team like the Jets, Tebow would be pretty good for. And if he gets an opportunity to start, yeah, they might never get him out of there.
Well, you know, I mean, the thing that Sanchez has never shown me the whole time he's been in the NFL is that at some point, you know, you can have serviceable quarterbacks run your offense and still have a playoff caliber team. But at some point, your quarterback's got to be counted on to win some games. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Tebow's proven that he can win when it's all on the line. You know, and most of the other teams that are, you know, playoff caliber, they can count on their quarterbacks to win games. Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, et al. And, you know, I just don't see that, you know, that Sanchez can say, okay, boys, climb on my back. We're going to win this game. I've never seen that in him. So, you know, we'll see.
I don't know if you guys saw that interview that Elway gave, but he did mention that because of Tebow, he was asked if Tebow winning those games affected how Peyton Manning thought about the Broncos. And Elway said, yes, we got to give Tebow credit, you know, for winning those games, because Peyton may have never thought about coming to Denver. And common sense tells you, here's Peyton Manning. If that team didn't win a playoff game, why would I go there? And then they asked Elway about Peyton, what he thought he would be like. And he said, I think he's going to be like he was 2 or 3 years ago. So they have high expectations for Peyton here.
Yeah, I would say that they have 96 million reasons to believe that Peyton Manning is
It's a lot of expectation.
It's a lot of reasons, Smokin'.
Speaking of expectations, I hate to cut you off, Chip.
Go right ahead, Mike. Go right ahead.
I was going to ask you what's going on in Bradenton.
What's going on in Bradenton? You know, the Pirates are getting ready for another season. Pedro Alvarez still is not hitting the ball, and they're going north with him. And I think really what this is going to be, Pedro Alvarez's last shot. I mean, I think they need to start him and find out right now, can this kid play Major League Baseball or can he not? And if he, they determine that he can't hit, it's going to be time to replace him with somebody that can, because he's got all the potential in the world. Right now the Pirates' team batting average is up and in a respectable area, but it's only spring training. And you look at the caliber of the people that are pitching against them. They're not batting against 100%. Major league starting pitchers. I still have my optimism for the team, but they're going to have some decisions to make. And for the Pirates to be successful this year, they need Pedro Alvarez to be the power hitter they drafted him and paid him to be.
What's your opinion about Alvarez?
I think Alvarez is trying to do too much. As I've read some reports from some scouts that say that he's trying to murder the ball, and they say that if he just relaxes and makes contact, he's got the power to hit it out to any part of the field. He's trying to hit him deep into the seats in right field. He's trying to pull the ball down the right field line too much. And I think if he can just get back to hitting the ball to all parts of the field, then he will find out that they go out in left field as easily as they do in right field. But I mean, his problem, is
you have to hit the ball, Chip, right. And part of the thing, I disagree with you here. We're all politically correct. We're coddling a lot of players. Now, he did not succeed in the major leagues last year. Why can't he go back to have success in the minor leagues? Straighten yourself out, hit 30 home runs by June, then come up to the majors. Get your confidence back. He's in a slump. They've tried to screw around with him, right or wrong, but he's not coming out of that funk. He's below the Mendoza line, in hitting, which is terrible here. We know how that is. So I say just send him to the minor leagues. And to me, I always think you respond to adversity if you're anything. And if you're being thrown back to the minor leagues, okay, that's a slap in the face. Now prove that you should be in the major leagues. By keeping him up here, I think he'll be done as a ball player because he's pressing, he's trying too hard, like Chip's saying. Where's he going to go there? I mean, he may be a great athlete, but a lot of great players started out for everything else. Look at Willie Mays, other guys. They look like they were going to be washed up in their first 30, 40 bats. Mickey Mantle even. So, wow. I mean, there's a lot of history there with players that become great, go through this adversity. Send him to the minors and let's see what he can do. What will change with the Pirates' record? They only played 100 games last year and did well. After that, they forgot about the 162 games you had to play. So we don't really need them. Let's try with what we have.
And on a more positive note, the injury that A.J. Burnett suffered, it appears that he's ahead of schedule and he's already pitching and off the mound and in game situations. And they say that they could see him back as early as the middle of April by the end of April.
Can he see?
He talked to James Harrison. That's who's consulting him on this. He said, I played football and hit other guys the next week. He said, get out and start throwing the ball. This is
like
Pittsburgh.
The wild thing.
This is Pittsburgh. Come on now.
The Pirates are going to need the veteran arm on their staff, and I think if they can get him back in April, it's going to be a bonus for them.
No, I got to go with Chip, I think, on the Alvarez thing. I think they need to play him. They need to find out if they're going to be able to do anything with him. He's a good baseball player. He's not doing well with the Pirate organization. They tinkered him around with him a little bit. If the Pirates get rid of Alvarez, he's going to go somewhere else, and he's going to be another Ramirez or Batista because he's going to go to a team where they can fix him. And they will fix him, and he will be a very good ball player. Pirates need to try to fix him themselves. They've already got him under contract. They're paying him way too much to send him to the minors. You got to get him out there and get him some at bats and try to get him straightened out a little bit.
Yeah, keep him at PNC Park at least till Cinco de Mayo.
You know what? That'll guarantee my world record bet that there'll be 20 seasons in a row. I hope you guys are right. It's hard to get out of a slump. And if you can't get out of it in spring training when you don't have pitchers at the top of their game, what are you going to do when the pitchers are in shape?
And Magic, look like you got a list for us, buddy.
Well, yeah, we said last week that we were going to talk about what we thought might be the 5 greatest sports moments in Pittsburgh history. A lot of different possibilities. 2 that stand out that have to be on there. But as far as the other three, there were a lot of possibilities. We're going to start out with November 15th, 1975. Pitt Panthers against Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And at the time, Pitt had a running back named Tony Dorsett. Jim, what did Tony do for us that day?
Well, you know, the young people watching today don't realize how great the tradition Notre Dame was. Notre Dame was as dominant a powerhouse for 100 years of college football as any team was. Tony Dorsett came to the University of Pittsburgh at 155 pounds. Myron Cope said they should have recruited Bubba Holmes out of Monessen, who ended up going to Minnesota over Tony Dorsett. And all Tony Dorsett did against Notre Dame in 4 games was rush for over 1,000 yards. And in 1975, he started off with 150 yards in the first quarter, ended up with 303 yards against the Fighting Irish, and that kind of, put him at the front of the list for the Heisman race. And he's still, to this day, the only player in Pitt history to win the Heisman Trophy, and I think he should have a statue in his honor somewhere in the city of Pittsburgh.
I think you're right. I think Tony Dorsett, probably the only reason that there aren't more people clamoring for a statue for him is the fact that he played for the Dallas Cowboys, which gives some people around here a bad taste in their mouth. But that's a fact. That day, Pitt beat Notre Dame that day, 34-20, and it was a good Notre Dame team that year. In fact, actually, it was a Notre Dame team that made history because of a movie. Because the following week was the week that Rudy got his chance to play against the Miami Hurricanes. That was actually the last game of the season. Pitt was a great team that year. Would they play Georgia?
Yeah.
In the Sugar Bowl. Great football team. They had some other pretty good players on there. Matt Cavanaugh, not so much in the NFL, but he was a very good college quarterback, and a guy that I have no idea what ever happened to him, but their place kicker was Carson Long. And he hit field goals from like 60 yards out, 50, 55, 60 yards out. I don't know if he ever went to the NFL because I never heard from him again after that season.
They had a wide receiver punt returner named Gordon Too Much Jones out of East Allegheny High School.
Wow.
Was great. Would have been a great NFL player, but he got drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that eventually drafted Doug Williams out of Grambling, a black quarterback. And Doug Williams used to break the webbing in your fingers on a 5-yard curl, man. He only knew one speed, throw it hard, man. Tore Gordon Jones's hands up, but what a great college receiver he was.
So yeah, we got to say that Tony Dorsett's performance that day was probably one of our top 5 performances in Pittsburgh history.
No question.
Well, September 30th, 1972, last game of the season. Roberto Clemente came to the ballpark with 2,999 hits. Chip?
Well, his last at bat, he doubled to, I believe it was left center field off John Matlack, and standing there, I can still remember the picture of him standing on second base, tipping his cap, and little did we know at the time that was going to be the last hit that he ever had in his career.
He wasn't at the game?
No.
Wow. I missed it too.
What?
No. I'm not one of those. That's funny that you mentioned that because I mentioned Wilt Chamberlain's, 100-point game, and there was 500 people in Hershey Arena that night, and there's probably 500,000 that say that they were there.
I heard it's only
so you know what? I wasn't there, and I'm not going to pretend like I was there. I do remember when he, watching. I think they may have been on the NBC Saturday
afternoon
on TV.
Game or something
I saw
like
the
that.
game
on TV.
But Roberto Clemente's last hit, his 3,000th hit, and he never played another inning of baseball, and that's got to be one of the most special moments in Pittsburgh sports history.
Now, did he foul a bunch of them off before he hit that double? Or?
It was 2-2. The count was 2-2. I don't know how many foul balls he may have hit.
He had that
foul balls.
Because he had that ability.
Because there was so much suspense there, and he had a big bat. He had a long bat.
It seems surprising that was his last at bat because it came in the 4th inning. But because the Pirates were winning the game, they never came at bat in the 9th inning.
Wow.
So they, that was it. That was his last at bat. Of course, he was killed.
He died tragically.
New Year's Day, 1973. Yeah.
And plane crash trying to bring aid to some earthquake
victims in Nicaragua. Yes,
Yeah.
And, I mean, he said that often that after players die, they get better. But Roberto Clemente was one of the best baseball players that I ever watched. It was a lot of fun to watch him. I was 13 years old when he died, but I used to love to watch him play. He maybe one of the best fielders I've ever seen. A good clutch hitter, but maybe one of the best fielders I've ever seen.
He had an arm like no other.
Wow.
The 1971 World Series, which unfortunately the Pirates did not make the playoffs in '72, but they did win the World Series in 1971, and that was Roberto Clemente's showcase. Wow. He threw out, to show his arm, from the warning track against the wall. He threw out Frank Robinson one game at third base. And then again, threw out Frank Robinson at home plate from the same spot, from against the right field wall.
Without a bounce, too, I think.
He could throw out players at first base from right field.
And he did.
And he did. And, and a little known fact is that when they developed AstroTurf fields, they taught players to throw the ball because on the second bounce it gained speed. So that's the reason why guys bounced him in. Well, Roberto Clemente played in the era when they were all grass fields. And you know what? He threw it there on a line. And I can remember going to games as a child, sitting out in the stands at Forbes Field, and just listening to the sound of him throwing the ball from the outfield it made it crack like a rifle shot when it hit the guy's glove. And it was like boom, and it was gone. You didn't see anything. A guy could throw strikes from the corner in right field to the plate, and it didn't look like it didn't even try.
It sounded like a pitcher was on the pitcher's mound throwing a fastball. Is what it sounded like. He had that type of talent. That's one in a lifetime that you see.
I miss those artificial fields.
Mm-hmm.
Three Rivers.
Yeah, Three Rivers.
Wait, do you have those all dirt city on fire fields?
All right, well.
What's next?
July 22nd, 2005. The NHL was coming out of a lockout season. They missed the entire season. And because they missed the entire season, there was no order of best teams, worst teams for them to base the draft on. So they had the lottery. And every one of the 30 teams in the NHL had an opportunity to get the number one pick, and the consensus choice for number one pick was Sidney Crosby. Wow. They went through it. It came down to, it was actually televised, it came down to the last two teams were Anaheim Mighty Ducks and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And July 22nd, 2005, the Penguins won. That ping pong ball bounced just for them. And the Penguins got a chance to draft Sidney Crosby, which they did on July 30th, 8 days later. You might look at it and say, okay, well, why that one instead of when they picked Mario Lemieux, or among whatever a couple years earlier they actually drafted Evgeny Malkin, although he was not going to come till a couple years later because he was stuck in Russia. But this pick right here, the reason we picked that one is because by picking Sidney Crosby, they pretty much had some leverage to get the new arena built and for the Penguins to stay. I believe that if the Penguins do not win that lottery and do not draft Sidney Crosby, they're no longer in Pittsburgh. Wow. They'll be wearing red and white and be the Kansas City Penguins now.
Well, actually, at the time, I believe Hamilton was trying to buy the Penguins, and that was an option for them to go. But the only reason why the Penguins are still here in Pittsburgh, thanks to Mario Lemieux, is because they drafted Sidney Crosby, and that allowed them to get the financing to get the new arena, which is what they needed to become competitive with the rest of the teams financially.
Yeah, so because of that, we think that the ping pong ball is one of the greatest moments in Pittsburgh sports history. And, well, we've got two left, and I guess it's pretty obvious what they are. It's just a matter of what order to put them in. I would go December 23rd, 1972, Pittsburgh Steelers against the Oakland Raiders. Until that year, the Pittsburgh Steelers had never won a playoff game. In fact, they've only actually had ever been in one, and they lost to Philadelphia. A lot of things happened in the Immaculate Reception that people don't talk about. Well, I mean, everybody knows what happened. Terry Bradshaw throws the ball. Frenchie Fuqua and Jack Tatum go up for it. It bounces back, and Franco Harris picks it up off a shoestring catch and runs it into the end zone. Steelers lose the next week to the Miami Dolphins, but that that play was the birth of Steeler Nation, because no matter what anybody will tell you, when that happened, you couldn't find somebody that could name 5 Steelers. All right, the Pittsburgh Pirates at the time were the most popular team in the city, but that started the growth of Steeler Nation. Another thing that a lot of people will tell you, or the story that you hear, is that Art Rooney was in the elevator on the way down to congratulate the Raiders owner on a victory. So he missed that play. Well, you know what? He wasn't alone, because that play was not televised. The Steelers couldn't sell out. It wasn't televised. And no matter how many people will tell you, well, I was in a hotel room in Cleveland or Youngstown and I got to watch the game, they're lying to you, because I checked, and neither one of those teams have any record sales or neither one of those cities have any record sales. Their economies have remained pretty much the same that day. So, that, guys, what do you think as far as that play? What has that done for the city?
Oh, it did a tremendous amount for the city, for the Steelers, for Franco Harris. I remember the day that the game was played. The game was played on a Saturday, and we were listening to the game in the kitchen of my best friend's house, and we heard the call, and I believe Jack Fleming may have been the announcer. And I can remember jumping up and down because there was mass confusion, and then they were saying Franco's got the ball and he's running it in, and it was really, really amazing. And then we got to watch the game 24 hours later, because they played it on a 24-hour tape delay, knowing already what the score was, and knowing what to look for. But the interesting thing about that season was the next week we played the Miami Dolphins. And we were the second to the last win the Dolphins had in their undefeated season. They went on to beat, I believe it was the Washington Redskins in the Super Bowl after they beat the Steelers. But, that's another useless little footnote to the Immaculate Reception. It was, it did.
It created a $1 billion industry for the Rooneys and the sports franchise that they have. And then you had the steel mills shutting down in the 80s, so now you have Steeler fans in every city and state in the country. But you would have never had that without that catch.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And I'm not too sure the game wasn't sold out, even though it was blacked out because if you go back to study the history of the 70s in the National Football League, a lot of things changed. Like Chip did a good point of mentioning the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins was undefeated, but they had to come to Pittsburgh to play. So the championship game the next week was in the Pittsburgh. But one thing people don't say as we wrap up is one thing it's not said much about the Immaculate Reception is that Franco was loafing on the play. He should not have been anywhere near that sideline when he was supposed to be in there pass blocking, but he was loafing on the play, and Phil Villapiano had him man-to-man for Oakland Raiders and let him go because he was loafing on the play. So.
Well, they had a lot of people don't get credit. First, Tony Klein and Horace Jones were all over Bradshaw. It was a miracle he even got the pass off. And you mentioned Villapiano. The reason that Franco Harris got into the end zone is a tight end, John McMacken, actually put a block on Villapiano and got Harris loose.
Wow.
And he walked in from there. That kind of leaves us with just one more.
Give us the top play.
One more play. I'll tell you what.
We're almost out of time.
The greatest event in the history of man, or the second greatest event in the history of mankind, was when God said, "Let there be light." And God said, "Let there be light," because He knew that on October 13th, 1960, the greatest defensive player in the history of baseball was going to swing the bat and get the greatest hit in the history of baseball when. Bill Mazeroski, with one swing of the bat, turned Ralph Terry from a good pitcher to the answer to a trivia question. And the guy who said, "It ain't over till it's over," Yogi Berra, quit chasing that ball. And the Pittsburgh Pirates beat the New York Yankees in 1960 World Series. And guys, not only is that the greatest event in Pittsburgh sports history or the greatest event in sports history, that's the greatest event in the history of the universe.
To speak to that point, that was the first time in the history of Major League Baseball that the World Series was won on the final at-bat at the bottom of the ninth inning.
Wow.
Okay, and there was one other time when there was a walk-off home run in the World Series. 1993, Joe Carter put one out against Mitch Williams
that was
of the Philadelphia
Game 6.
Phillies.
That was Game 6, not Game 7.
Okay.
Was you there, Al?
No. I missed it.
Anyway, guys, thanks a lot. It's been a great show. We'll see you next week at Pittsburgh Sportsline. Go Pens.